Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the splintery floorboards and smoky rafters of a medieval peasant's cottage. Outside, the wind howls like an old dog with a toothache, rattling the shutters that don't really shut and sneaking icy drafts through every crack. You've just come in from hauling firewood, barely enough to keep a single flame going till dawn. Your hands are numb, your tunic is damp with sleet, and your toes, you can't feel them. Which, weirdly, is kind of a blessing. Inside the dim cottage, you're greeted by the unmistakable scent of wet wool, damp straw, and something vaguely agricultural. Your bed for the night is a pile of straw mixed with old cloth lumpy sacks, and at least one chicken that refuses to relocate. And that's luxury, by the way. Many folks are still lying directly on the floor, or worse, on the cold, hard ground. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious to know who's joining me in these sleepy rabbit holes. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is how everything in this place is designed to trap heat, or at least make a noble attempt. Your outer tunic is wool woven loosely enough to itch constantly, but tightly enough to keep out the worst of the cold. Underneath a grimy linen shirt clings to your skin, already damp from the effort of just existing. Layers are key, and you've got a few each, more riddled with holes and memories than the last. Beneath your bare feet, the floor is strewn with rushes, dried plants meant to soften the ground and absorb the various accidents of daily life. In theory, they're changed often. In practice? Well, they haven't been changed this season. Maybe last. Historians still argue whether medieval rushes actually helped with hygiene or were just decorative tripping hazards that smelled of rotting herbs. As you lower yourself onto the bed, a lumpy sack stuffed with straw feathers and something that crunches unsettlingly, you try to adjust your limbs into a configuration that avoids the worst of the pokey bits. There's no pillow, obviously. You bunch up your cloak, which smells like damp dog and chimney soot, and hope for a decent night's sleep. Outside, the frost sets in. The windows, if you're lucky enough to have them, are made of oiled parchment stretched over wooden frames. Glass is for churches and castles. Your version lets in light and cold in equal measure. In the dead of winter, villagers might even block them up completely with boards or dung to keep the wind out. And yes, you heard that right. Dung. Welcome to Insulation Peasant Edition. To keep warm, your family does what all families do, pile in together. Not for sentiment, but for survival. Everyone's packed shoulder to shoulder, including the kids, the elderly, and whoever's recovering from the last round of plague or childbirth. And that's not hyperbole. People gave birth in these very same beds. Honestly, it's best not to think about that too hard. By the fire, more of a smoldering pile of damp twigs than a proper blaze, you can almost feel your fingers again. You stretch them out toward the flames, ignoring the acrid smoke stinging your eyes. Chimneys are for the rich. You have a simple hole in the roof, maybe. Sometimes, not even that. The smoke hovers thickly around the beams, occasionally finding a path upward, or directly into your lungs. One fun fringe theory. Some medieval folks believed that smoke was actually good for the health. They thought it hardened the body and even helped keep away evil spirits. Well, it definitely keeps away comfort and breathable air, so maybe there's some truth in that. You wrap your cloak tighter, shifting to keep your legs warm. The cat, sensing your body heat, curls up on your belly. The dog stretches beside you, snoring softly. Somewhere under the bed, a rat scratches. Just ignore that. Everyone else does. The air smells like old ashes, onion sweat, and boiled cabbage. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar. You've spent your whole life in this cottage, maybe even born in the same spot where you now lie curled up. Your family's been here for generations. Not much has changed. The walls are wattle and daub woven sticks coated in mud and straw. Thick enough to block wind, thin enough to hear your neighbor snore through the wall. You'd think people would insulate better, but resources are scarce. That wool tunic you're wearing might have been passed down from your grandfather, patched and repatched until the original color is anyone's guess. Blankets are rare, and most are scratchier than the personalities of the villagers after a month of turnips and no sun. By now your eyes are starting to droop. The fire's fading, and the cold presses in again, especially near your feet. You shift, trying to tuck your legs under your body, but there's just not enough room. Your cousin's knee is in your back. You nudge him. He doesn't stir. Typical. You think of summer distant hazy and probably muddy, but at least not freezing. In the meantime, you listen to the soft wheeze of breathing all around you, the creak of the roof beams, and the occasional drip from the wall. Yes, that's melting frost. Yes, it's dripping directly onto your tunic. And yes, it will probably freeze again before morning. Good night. The fire's down to a red, grumbling glow now. You shift again under your cloak, trying to nudge a warmer spot into the straw beneath you. No luck. It's either damp, sharp, or mysteriously warm in a way you'd rather not investigate. As you lie there blinking at the low ceiling, a smoky haze curling above your face, you realize the fire isn't just your source of warmth tonight. It's your most dangerous roommate. Your hearth is the heart of the home, literally and figuratively. Every meal, every chore, and every attempt at comfort happens around that sooty stone circle. But it's not vented. Not really. Some homes have a crude hole in the roof, others just leave the door cracked. Most nights the smoke builds up and fills the upper half of the room, turning your loft sleep space into a slow-cooking chamber of tears and coughs. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants even understood the risks of smoke inhalation, or whether they just accepted coughing as a part of life like bad teeth and early death. Either way, your lungs are getting a workout, and yet, despite the choking haze, you scoot closer to the fire's edge because it's the only thing between you and frozen toes. You stretch out a hand carefully, since your younger sibling just peed in the straw again, and you're steering clear of that entire quadrant and grab a chunk of wood. It's damp. Of course it is. Everything is damp. You toss it on the fire anyway. It hisses like a displeased goose, but catches eventually sputtering to life with a thin coil of smoke that snakes straight into your eyes. You blink, rubbing your face with your sleeve, which smells vaguely of onions and goats. In the corner, someone coughs hard enough to wake a chicken. The bird flutters indignantly, knocking over a wooden bowl. No one moves to fix it. Movement is energy, and energy is precious. Back when the Romans left, they took with them their floor heating and clean water luxuries. Now, you're on your own. There are no vents, no stoves, no carbon monoxide detectors, just a pile of embers, a stick for poking, and a deep-rooted hope that you'll wake up again in the morning. And let's talk about fleas. Oh, you've got them. Everyone's got them. You've got so many that scratching has become more of a pastime than a reaction. Some folks sleep with a bowl of water under the bed, thinking it'll attract fleas and drown them. Others rub garlic on their skin, claiming it repels both insects and the devil. Honestly, garlic repels most things, people included. But you might give it a try. Anything's better than the constant itch that makes you twitch like a medieval jazz dancer every few minutes. A fringe tidbit from a 15th century herbal someone once suggested: sleeping with fresh mint stuffed in your ears to keep lice from crawling into your brain. You're not sure if it works, but at least your ears will smell nice at your funeral. Every now and then, you hear about a lucky soul in the village who managed to kill all their bed bugs. Don't get excited. It probably means they burned their whole bedhouse and possibly themselves in the process. But hey, no more bed bugs. You shift again half asleep and hear the faint sound of dripping. No, it's not rain. The walls themselves sweat in the cold. The mixture of daub and mud absorbs moisture all winter, then weeps quietly at night, like your uncle after 3 mugs of bad mead. Your clothes are still damp, your body's still aching. But your eyes start to close. The heat of the fire just barely reaches your cheek. Your breath fogs softly in the air. And then someone opens the door. You sit bolt upright as an Arctic gust slams through the room like an uninvited ghost. Everyone groans. The fire flickers dangerously. A dog whines. Close the door, someone mutters, but it's too late. The room's precious heat escapes like a sinner fleeing a sermon. The culprit is your neighbor back from the woods with a bundle of twigs. He grunts, dumps them by the hearth, and slams the door. The latch doesn't catch. It never does. You shuffle over and wedge a stick under it. Maybe that'll hold. Maybe not. Either way, no one's fixing it until spring. You return to your bed spot now even colder and resettle yourself. You pull your tunic tighter, wish for socks, and try to remember what it feels like to be warm. One joke going around the village. If your left foot's cold, you're alive. If your right foot's warm, someone else is using it. You smile faintly in the dark. It's not funny, but it's true. The night stretches on, long and dark, and filled with the occasional pop of firewood, the whimper of a dreaming child, the sharp snap of a mousetrap. You hope it's the trap, and the slow sighs of people enduring another hour. You drift off again briefly, only to awaken with a start. The fire's nearly out. You fumble around for more wood, find a mostly dry branch, and toss it on. You blow softly. It catches. Your hands are black with soot, your eyes sting from smoke, and your body aches from shivering in strange positions. But you're still here. And somehow, despite the fleas, the fumes, and the frost, that's enough for now. You stir again in the dark, feeling something warm and coarse pressed up against your side. It grunts. You grunt back. That's not your cousin. That's the pig. Yes, your pig sleeps with you. Not in a metaphorical, we treat animals like family, way more like a, we need every ounce of body heat we can get. And pigs are surprisingly toasty way. You'd be shocked how comforting a snorting, hay-smelling piglet can be on a frosty night, when your breath curls in the air like a ghost trying to escape. It sounds bizarre, maybe even a little unsettling. But for a medieval peasant, it's perfectly normal. You raise livestock right alongside your kids, sometimes more successfully. Chickens cluck under the bench, goats sleep tied to table legs. And yes, the family pig might very well curl up beside you, radiating the kind of warmth only a 200-pound living furnace can provide. This is central heating village style. And it's not just about warmth. Livestock were assets, investments, even status symbols. You kept them close because they were valuable and vulnerable. Losing a pig to the cold or to a nighttime thief could mean no meat that winter, no fat for candles, no trade at the market. So you bring the pig in. You talk to it. You thank it quietly when it lays down beside you like a wrinkly, snorting hot water bottle. You try not to think about what it'll become next spring. Historians still argue whether the practice of co-sleeping with animals was widespread or mostly regional. But archaeological digs often find domestic animal bones scattered right where you'd expect, around the hearth, under beds inside walls. Some say it was out of necessity. Others suggest spiritual reasons, animals as protectors, companions, or even talismans. Honestly, when it's -10 degrees and your nose hairs are freezing, you'll take all three. The pig shifts again, snuffling through the straw. Someone murmurs in their sleep. You turn your face toward the dying fire and let your thoughts drift. But of course, sleep doesn't come easy when your bedmates include a full family, a semi-feral chicken, and a pig that snores louder than the village blacksmith. Still, there's a rhythm to it. You breathe in, the pig snorts out. The baby whimpers, the mother hushes. A log pops. Somewhere in the dark, your father mutters a prayer, half to the saints, half to the smoke. You've heard it your whole life. Sometimes he throws in a curse or two depending on the mood. And let's not forget the ever-awkward morning ritual, waking up to find someone has rolled on top of you, or worse, that you've rolled off the bed into a freezing puddle of who knows what. There's no shame in it. Everyone smells, everyone's greasy. Hygiene is mostly theoretical from November to March. Bathing, not tonight. Not this week. Maybe not until Easter. You once asked your mother when people bathed in the winter. She laughed so hard she nearly dropped the soup pot. When the snow melts, she said, and even then, only if the bishop's coming. Besides, cold water can kill you faster than dirt. People fear getting wet in winter more than they fear fleas. You wipe your hands on your tunic and call it clean, a blessing of sorts. Clean is more a state of mind now. Fringe folklore says that pigs can ward off evil spirits. There's an old woman in the next hamlet over who swears her sow saved her from a ghost one night. You believe her. That pig has a look about it. Still, you suspect most evil spirits wouldn't dare enter this house anyway. The smell alone would scare them off. Your mind wanders again as the night deepens. You think of stories told in the evenings by firelight and flickering candle. Tales of wolves in the forest of fairies dancing in the frost of travelers turned to ice statues for not tipping the innkeeper. Your uncle once swore he saw a frost giant on his way to the privy. You're not sure if it was the cold or the ale talking. The wind shrieks again, rattling the shutters. The pig grunts. You shift closer to it. It's ridiculous how grateful you are for this snorting lump of animal. But in this moment, it's your saving grace. You bury your nose in your arm, trying to block the worst of the barnyard funk, and let your body settle again. Because see, sleeping with a pig is still better than sleeping alone. The cold out there is deadly. And in here, as chaotic and unsanitary and noisy as it is, you're surviving. You're wrapped in warmth, not just from cloaks and wool, but from proximity, familiarity, and the strange communal strength of being too cold to fight about anything. In the morning, you'll rise stiff and sore, covered in straw and pig hair. You'll grumble about your aching back. You'll scratch at the flea bites. You'll scrape frost off the inside of the window with a bone spoon. But for now, you're not frozen. You're not alone. And that pig, she's breathing like a soft bellows, keeping your side warm, a little miracle wrapped in mud and bacon to be. It's somewhere past midnight now, and the air in the cottage has grown colder despite your efforts. The fire has dipped into a lazy red whisper, and everyone's in that half-conscious, mostly uncomfortable stage of winter sleep. You're wedged awkwardly between your aunt's elbow and the pig's backside, and someone's toe is pressed firmly against your shin. You shift slightly, disturbing a cascade of straw and waking a chicken that objects with a single loud squawk. Ah yes, communal sleeping. The idea of personal space doesn't exist here. You sleep where there's room, and tonight there's none. There are at least 10 bodies packed into this single-room home. Parents, children, a grandmother who hums softly in her dreams, 2 cousins and 3 animals of indeterminate hygiene. You're shoulder to shoulder, breath to breath, and smell to smell. You've never been more aware of how many ways a human body can creak, groan, or emit mysterious sounds under a single wool blanket. There's an art to surviving this nightly sardine formation. You learn not to kick, You learn that if you don't secure your blanket edge early, you'll be tugging it back from someone's unconscious death grip all night. You learn that arguments about snoring are futile, and that whoever sleeps nearest the wall gets the worst of the condensation drip. Historians still debate how common it was for entire families to share beds, but most agree that in homes like yours, single room, no partitions, it was simply reality. Not even a question. Wealthier folks had chambers and curtains. You've got breath-fogged air and a pillow made of old trousers stuffed with hay. Your nose is cold. You pull your cloak up, wrapping it around your face like a desperate burrito. Across from you, your little brother murmurs something in his sleep. Your grandmother coughs once then again, deep, wet, and unsettling. She's had that cough since Michaelmas, and no one's sure if it's a chill a curse or just old age pressing its thumb a little harder this winter. In the semi-dark, you watch the beam above your head. It creaks gently, settling like an old man's knees. There's a curious stain near the joint. You're not sure what it is. You'd rather not know. The pig snores again, this time rhythmically. It's oddly soothing. The chicken is back asleep. The dog twitches in its dreams, probably chasing rats in the thatch. You reach over and absently scratch its ear, then rub your fingers together. Fleas? Obviously. A breeze snakes across the floor, cruel and unexpected. It cuts through the room like a jealous spirit looking for attention. You feel it race up your legs, slide over your back, and vanish into the roof beams. You shudder. A low chorus of groans follows. Everyone felt that. Then comes the shuffle. That awkward group think movement where several people try to turn over at once without elbowing someone in the face or kicking the goat. It never works. Someone always ends up with an armpit in their ear or a foot in their ribs. You manage to pivot onto your side. The straw pokes a bit less this way. You tuck your hands under your chin. For a moment, things are still. And then you smell it. Someone has passed wind, dramatically. No one says anything. No one ever does. You just silently endure letting the pig take the blame if needed. It's a silent pact. An unspoken agreement of medieval courtesy. We're all in this together, and we pretend nothing happened. To survive a medieval winter's night means learning how to sleep not just beside people, but practically inside their dreams. You become intimately familiar with your neighbor's snore cadence, your cousin's night twitches, your uncle's muttered Latin prayers. It's oddly bonding, like a very smelly, very crowded sleepover that never ends. A quirky historical tidbit: in some parts of Europe, it wasn't uncommon to borrow a bed in a stranger's house if you were traveling through. Just plop down next to a local family, no questions asked. It was considered rude not to offer the space, especially if you had a warm fire going. Imagine Airbnb, but with hay and absolutely zero privacy. Another interesting theory. Some scholars suggest that communal sleep patterns were segmented. People might drift off early, wake in the middle of the night, stoke the fire, talk quietly, maybe pray, or even sneak off for a moment of privacy if you could find any. Then they'd return to sleep for a second rest. There's debate, of course, but the idea adds a strange kind of texture to this already tangled nest of sleepers. As you lie there vaguely aware of someone's hair in your mouth and your left arm going numb under your cousin's head, you realize how strange modern solitude would feel. You're never alone here. Not when you're working, not when you're eating, and certainly not when you're sleeping. The walls are thin, the lives are shared, and the cold forces everyone into a kind of reluctant intimacy. You sigh, breath fogging softly, and shift again. The dog stirs. The pig grunts. The cold seeps back in. But you're still here, and despite the chaos, there's a strange comfort in the closeness. A rhythm to the noise. a warmth in the weight of it all pressing in from every side. You wake again, if you ever really slept with a start. Your legs are stiff, your back aches like you've been rolled down a hill, and your nose is so cold you wonder if it's still attached. Around you, the room is hushed, save for a low symphony of wheezing, snoring, sniffling, and the occasional murmured dream fragment. But something's different. Your breath, visible as a faint puff in the early morning dark, floats before your face like steam from a dying pot. The fire is completely out. Not even embers. Just a cold, ashy crater where life once flickered. And the room, it's freezing. Literally. You sit up slowly, rubbing your arms, trying to coax some blood into your fingers. The air bites you like 1,000 tiny needles. You look over to the water bucket near the hearth, solid ice. Not just a crust, a full, thick layer of frost. You could skate on it if it wasn't in a wooden bucket by a dead fire, and if you weren't half wrapped in a pig. Outside, you can hear the wind, raging, still rattling the shutters and sending shivers through the frame of the cottage. Somewhere above the thatch groans. You wonder how many more winters it can survive before it just gives up and collapses like the rest of your enthusiasm. This is it. This is the morning after moment when survival feels like a daily negotiation. You made it through another night, barely, and now you're rewarded with joints that won't bend and feet that won't feel. You tap your toes against the ground. Nothing. You poke them with a stick. Still nothing. Cold has a way of numbing both pain and the desire to care. Historians still argue whether frostbite was a recognized condition or just lumped into the bad luck and peasant problems category. Either way, you know from experience that blackened toes are usually a sign you'll be hobbling come spring if you're still hobbling at all. You pull on your boots stiff and uncooperative. The leather is so cold it might as well be stone. Your fingers struggle with the laces, more frozen twine than string now. You tug your cloak around you like a warrior dressing for battle, because stepping outside into that wind is nothing short of war. But first, the ritual. You shuffle to the door, still sleepy-eyed, and unbolt it. The gust that hits you feels personal. It slaps your face, rushes down your neck, and makes your teeth ache. The sky is pale gray, not the soft light of dawn, but the dull warning of another sunless day. Clouds stretch low and heavy like a wool blanket soaked in regret. You glance back inside. No one else has moved. Typical. You're always the first up. You think about boiling water, but the hearth is cold and your motivation even colder. Besides, the woodpile is empty. Again. You step outside anyway, because that's where the outhouse is. Or rather, that's where the pit is, behind a leaning fence post and under an angry tree that's always looked like it wants to bite someone. You take the chamber pot, mutter a curse about frozen fingers, and get on with it. Back inside, the cottage is starting to stir. The baby wails, then coughs. Your mother begins her morning rituals, sighing loudly enough to stir the living and the dead, followed by the unmistakable sound of trying to light damp kindling with a flint that's nearly worn smooth. You offer help. She grunts in response. You try anyway. Eventually, you get a few sparks, then a puff of smoke, and after some coaxing, a flame. The fire is reborn. It's small and pathetic, but the glow feels like a victory. You warm your hands. They ache as blood returns. You wince, flex your fingers, and breathe onto them. The warmth is temporary, but you'll take it. Your sister joins you, dragging the pig's blanket behind her and wearing it like a royal cape. Her nose is red, and she's shivering. She sits near the hearth, eyes glassy. You hand her a scrap of bread, and she eats it without a word. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is always a gamble. Maybe there's some porridge left. Maybe someone remembered to soak the beans. Maybe there's just enough stale bread to gnaw on. Today it's broth-thin cabbagey and lukewarm. You sip it slowly, letting the heat fill your chest. It tastes like boiled sadness, but warms you anyway. One quirky note from the history books: some villagers believed if you slept with garlic under your pillow, you wouldn't feel hunger as sharply the next day. It didn't work. But at least your dreams smelled better than your reality. The pig stretches, finally waking, and immediately does what pigs do best, making noise and demanding food. You feed her a frozen turnip and give her a pat. She snorts her thanks and settles back down by the hearth, radiating warmth like a sainted sausage. You envy her simplicity. The day hasn't even begun, and already it feels long. The cold lingers like a judgment, stiff in the corners of the room, in the wood of the furniture, in your very bones. There's a silence to it, not peaceful, but heavy, like the world itself is bracing for another hard day. You wrap yourself tighter and glance at the door. It's time to fetch water. Again. Your fingers protest. Your knees crack. But you stand anyway. Because in the medieval winter, survival is a ritual. And you perform it daily in aching silence and chattering teeth, because the alternative is worse. The wind's still howling as you step out again, your feet crunching across the frozen earth, the bucket's handle biting into your hand. The sky's just as gray and unwelcoming as it was before, except now the clouds look heavier, almost thoughtful, as if they're deciding whether to drop a fresh layer of snow or just continue brooding menacingly overhead. You trudge toward the well breath clouding thick in front of your face. The village is quiet, save for the occasional bray of a donkey or the sharp call of crows perched along the rooftops like tiny feathered landlords. Everyone else is still huddled inside, delaying the inevitable. You pass a neighbor wrapped in layers so thick he looks like a heap of laundry given legs. He nods at you. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. It's cold. You both know it. Why waste breath? The well is stiff with ice, the rope creaking and the pulley groaning like they've aged 20 years overnight. You lower the bucket, listen for the distant splash, and then heave it back up with a grunt. The water is sharp and cold and biting. You spill a little onto your boot and regret it immediately. That'll freeze by the time you're back inside. Returning to the cottage, you spot the village charm tree, a gnarled old ash stuck in the center of the common path. It's covered in rags, bits of twine bones, feathers, and even the occasional scrap of parchment. Superstition, obviously. Effective, debatable. But in the dead of winter, when death feels closer than comfort, people will cling to anything with even a whiff of luck. Historians still argue whether such trees were respected religious relics or just the medieval version of a community suggestion box for the spirits. Either way, you mutter a quick blessing as you pass it just in case. Back inside, the warmth is barely noticeable, but it's better than outside. Your siblings are up now, arguing over a crust of bread. Your father stares into the fire like it just insulted his dignity. Your mother's muttering about chores, which means you'll be outside again soon, probably hauling more wood or breaking ice from the wash basin. But before you can get roped into anything, your grandmother begins her morning tale, half warning, half bedtime story, in reverse. She leans toward the fire, eyes bright, despite the cold voice crackling like dry twigs. They say the wind carries spirits this time of year, she whispers. Dead ones, hungry ones, lost ones. Your little brother stops chewing. Your sister clutches her doll. You listen because you always do, even if you tell yourself it's just nonsense. On the coldest nights, she continues, they ride the wind in cloaks of frost. If they find you alone, they steal your warmth. They whisper your name. If you answer, She lets the words dangle like icicles, then taps her cane against the floor. You'll never wake up. A beat of silence. Then your cousin farts loudly and ruins the tension. Still the idea lingers. You've heard versions of that tale all your life. Frost spirits, wine demons, invisible hands that touch your feet at night. Some villagers wear charms made from knotted string and bird bones. Others sprinkle ashes across doorways to confuse the spirit's path. Your family hangs iron keys near the window, just rusty enough to look ancient, just shiny enough to reflect whatever's lurking. A quirky tidbit: there's an old folk belief that sneezing in winter was a sign your soul had momentarily escaped, and you had to say, "God bless you," fast enough to keep it from freezing. So every sneeze now triggers a flurry of muttered blessings and frantic sleep-slurred prayers. And honestly, when your world is this raw and cold and uncertain, who wouldn't be a little superstitious? Later that day, as you scrape frost from the edge of the table and nurse a splinter from the woodpile, you hear the church bell. Not a summons. Just a reminder you're still here. Still breathing. Still expected to kneel in a freezing chapel and mutter your thanks for that fact. But for now, your mind returns to the cold, creeping draft of last night, the one that felt different, like it had intention. You think of the spirits, of the wind whispering through the thatch, of the shiver that didn't come from outside air, but from somewhere quieter, deeper. You don't believe exactly, but you also don't not believe. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, which feels more like it gave up, you help reinforce the windows with spare cloth and a few hunks of packed mud. Your fingers are too cold to feel the splinters. You light a candle early, tucking it into a clay holder near the hearth. Light means warmth. Light means safety. The pig's back inside now, already curling in her usual spot by the fire, blissfully unaware of the ghosts your grandmother swore were scratching at the corners of the world. You sit beside her cloak drawn tightly around your knees, the flickering flame painting soft shadows on the walls. The wind picks up again outside, and you whisper without thinking, "Not tonight, not this one," just in case. Night has fallen again, as casually cruel as ever. The sun didn't so much set as fade, like a candle wick drowning in its own wax. The gray sky went darker, the wind went sharper, and now you're back in the one room that's both home and bunker, settling into the great medieval pastime, waiting out the cold. Dinner, if you can call it that, was thin barley gruel and half a carrot that looked like it had seen better centuries. You chewed slowly, because that's the only way to make it last, and because chewing fast risks cracking a tooth on something unexpectedly crunchy. You're not quite sure what it was. Best not to ask. Now the pot's been scraped clean. The fire is rekindled, small, grudging, and barely bright enough to color the walls. The room smells of smoke, stale cabbage, and people. A powerful combination, but you're used to it. Your stomach growls again. It's like clockwork now, an evening chorus of hunger pangs echoing softly from every direction. Your body is exhausted, yet desperate. That meal wasn't enough. Not in winter. Not when your days are spent hauling, chopping, patching, and shivering. You glance at the storage shelf, a few onions, some dried peas, one shriveled apple. The salted meat is long gone. The bread's mostly mold and ambition at this point. You remember hearing about one household that tried boiling leather to make soup. The boots were never the same. Historians still argue whether peasants lived in perpetual hunger or just occasional lean times. But what's clear is this: in winter everyone was one spoiled turnip away from disaster. Famine wasn't a rare beast. It was a seasonal visitor. You've seen what it does. You remember last winter when old Marta from the edge of the village shrank to almost nothing before anyone noticed she'd stopped coming to church. They found her in her cottage eyes, open wrapped in every blanket she owned. There was no food in the house, not even crumbs, just a half-empty water jug and her wooden rosary. They buried her on a day so cold the ground had to be hacked open like stone. You helped? You still remember the sound the shovel made. Now as you curl into your cloak with a belly not quite empty but nowhere near full, you try to ignore the cold clawing at your back and the way your joints ache like they're already considering retirement. Your little brother mumbles in his sleep beside you. He's dreaming of bread. Again. You can tell by the way he smacks his lips. It'd be funny if it weren't so painfully relatable. You shift closer to the pig, not even pretending it's about affection anymore. Her side is warm solid and smells vaguely of everything she's ever eaten. Still better than nothing. You drape part of your cloak over her. She grunts and adjusts generously, allowing the arrangement. In the corner, your grandmother mutters another story. Something about a woman who fed her family nothing but snow and prayers. The prayers worked, she says, but only for the youngest. You pull your cloak tighter. One curious tidbit: some villagers believed that if you left a crust of bread by the hearth, the spirits of the hungry would take it instead of your soul. Others just figured it was a way to keep mice occupied. Either way, there's always a crust tucked under the firewood now. Superstition meets pest control. The wind howls again, and the roof groans as if considering retirement. The thatch is holding for now, but you don't trust it. Not with the snow heavy on the beams. You lie back and stare at the ceiling, counting the knots in the wood. You've done this 1,000 times. You never remember the number. Sleep doesn't come easily when your stomach grumbles louder than your thoughts. You try to think of something else, anything else. Summer, maybe. The green fields, the berry bushes. The rare moments when your hands weren't cracked and bleeding from cold. Even then, food wasn't always guaranteed, but at least you could forage. At least you could work for it. In winter, all you can do is wait, and ration, and hope. Your father has that look again, the one where his jaw is tight and his eyes are far off. You know he's thinking about the stores, about how long the onions will last, about what he can trade for a sack of barley. He's thinking about who might die first if things get worse. He won't say it, but you can feel it in the silence. Back when you were younger, you thought adults always had a plan. Now you realize most of them are just improvising with a poker face and a prayer. You try to sleep. Again. You close your eyes, nestle into the straw, ignore the persistent itch of something definitely alive in your tunic, and will yourself into dreams. They don't come. Instead, you stare into the dark, listening to the wind gnawing at the walls and your family breathing shallow in their sleep. Another night. Another fast. Another small, invisible victory just for making it this far. Morning, or what passes for it, arrives with no fanfare, just a faint gray seeping through the parchment-covered window, and a shriek of wind that makes you flinch before your eyes are even open. The fire is out. Again. Of course. Your bones feel like someone stuffed you with wet stones overnight. You roll over and regret it instantly. Your shoulder aches, your neck stiff, and you're definitely sleeping in the damp patch again. The pigs hogged most of the warmth, bless her selfish snorting heart. Everyone else is still pretending to sleep, wrapped in layers of cloth and denial. Then you hear it. Bong. The church bell. Distant echoing and far too confident for this early in the morning. It rings once, then again, slow and somber, like it knows exactly what it's waking you up for another trudge through frost and fatigue, to kneel in a freezing chapel and pretend you're not thinking about turnips. Church isn't optional, not unless you're dead dying or the priest owes you money. It's expected, not because anyone believes you'll be struck down by lightning if you skip, but because the village sees everything. And missing Mass means whispers, questions, and maybe a side-eye from Father Adalbert that could curdle milk. You groan, stretch, and rise like a creaky gate. Your boots, still stiff with yesterday's splash of water, greet you with the enthusiasm of cold bricks. You jam your feet in, wince, and yank your cloak tight. Your sister mutters something about saints and splinters and rolls over. Outside, the sky's the color of dishwater, and the ground is already slush. The chapel looms at the top of the hill as inviting as a hangover. Its stones are wet, the door swells from the moisture, and stepping inside feels like walking into a cave carved out of a glacier. There's no heating, obviously. The warmest thing in the room is Father Adalbert's breath, and even that smells like onions and regret. You sit on a splintery bench beside your family cloak, drawn close hands buried deep in your sleeves. Everyone looks like bundles of old rags come to life. The baby whimpers. Your grandmother prays with one eye open. The woman in front of you has a frost mustache forming on her veil. The priest begins. You try to focus. You really do. But the only Latin you catch is something about mercy and bread, and now you're just hungry again. Historians still argue whether peasants genuinely understood the services or just attended out of social obligation and routine. Latin wasn't the language of the people after all. It was the language of God, sure, but also the language of keeping peasants quietly in their place. You glance at the stained glass, one of the few luxuries the chapel has. It's cracked in 3 places and fogged with condensation. But when the light hits it just right, which it doesn't today, you can make out a haloed saint doing something vaguely heroic, probably while fasting voluntarily. Must be nice. There's a draft. Of course. It creeps under the door and swirls around your ankles like a judgmental cat. You cross your legs, uncross them, stomp your feet quietly. Doesn't help. Then comes the incense, a thick, smoky fog, billowing from Father Adalbert's swinging censer. The smell is sweet cloying and totally out of place in this icebox of a chapel. It fills your nose, tickles your throat, and makes your eyes water. Not from emotion, but from sheer sensory overload. Someone sneezes. 3 people murmur, "Bless you," automatically. A quirky note in some villages, folks would deliberately sit near the incense burner to mask their own body odor during winter. A kind of holy cover-up. You consider migrating up the aisle for that exact reason. But figure the effort isn't worth the foot pain. Eventually, the service ends. People mumble amens, cross themselves, and shuffle toward the door like penitents escaping purgatory. Outside, the snow has started. Light, powdery, and annoying. It clings to your cloak and lashes at your face as you trudge back home. By now, your boots have started to leak. You feel it one cold, creeping wet spot on your sock. There's no fixing it, just one more discomfort to carry, until it fades into the background of general medieval suffering. Back at the cottage, you peel off your outer layers, trying to shake the damp before it becomes permanent. The fire's been rekindled, bless whoever did it, and the pig is snoring again, tail twitching like she owns the place. You settle near the hearth and try to stretch out your toes. Someone hands you a bowl of hot water and a cloth. Not for washing, of course, just to wrap your hands in for a few minutes. You sigh as the warmth seeps in. This is what passes for comfort now, a warm bowl, a loyal pig, and the knowledge that for the next 6 hours at least, no one expects you to go back outside. You lie down for a moment, eyes closing, the scent of smoke curling softly around your nose. Outside the chapel, bells fall silent, the snow thickens, and the day drifts forward in quiet, cold inevitability. Evening creeps in again, stealthy as a pickpocket and twice as cruel. The light fades without much drama, just a slow dimming of what little brightness the sky could muster. You can't even see the sun dip below the trees. It just sort of gives up around mid-afternoon and slinks away behind the clouds. Inside the cottage, the fire's holding barely. Someone's been feeding it like it's the last living thing in the house. The warmth doesn't reach the corners, but you huddle near it anyway. Sharing space with your siblings, your cousins, and the pig who now believes the hearth is hers by birthright. No one argues. She's the warmest among you, and you're all just honored to bask in her radiant porcine glow. But tonight is different. Tonight is that night. Festival night. It's the one night of the year when the village collectively agrees to pretend they aren't cold, tired, or hungry. The fire in the common square is already being built stacked higher than usual, like a wooden tower daring the frost to come closer. Music is being tuned, or rather, rustic instruments are being knocked back into something close to harmony. And there's a murmur of excitement in the air, faint but present, like a memory that might turn real again. You pull on your cloak, wrap an extra rag around your neck, and head outside with the others. Your breath floats like fog, curling and vanishing with each step. The snow crunches underfoot, packed from the boots of dozens of villagers already gathered in the square. And there it is, the bonfire. Glorious, massive, flickering like a dragon's heart. You feel its heat before you even get close. Real, penetrating warmth. The kind that gets through your cloak, your tunic, your skin down into your bones. It's the first time in weeks you felt truly warm. You inch closer, almost reverent. Everyone else does the same. No pushing, no shoving. Just a crowd drawn together by instinct and desperation. The village musicians start playing a reed pipe, a goat-skin drum, someone banging on a barrel with sticks. It's not refined, but it's real. And somehow, it stirs you. Your mother is already clapping. Your little brother's spinning in circles, arms out. Even your father cracks a smile, just a sliver. But there it is. Your grandmother hums an old song, something about harvest and hearth, and holding on through the dark. And then, like magic, the dancing begins. It's clumsy, chaotic, and absolutely necessary. You're pulled into it without thinking, feet moving before your brain can object. Around you, laughter rises like steam. Children squeal. Someone passes a flask. You take a sip and it burns sharp, smoky, probably illegal. You cough, laugh, and keep moving. This is it. The one night where cold is driven back not just by flame, but by shared noise, warmth, and movement. You forget your hunger for a moment. You forget your blisters and your stiff joints. The music takes over. You're just a body near a fire, spinning with others under the blinking gaze of the stars. One curious tidbit: it was believed that dancing in winter could keep evil spirits at bay. Not through ritual, but through sheer, joyful defiance. If we can dance, the logic went, we're still alive. And the dead don't dance. Historians still debate whether these festivals had pagan origins or were just desperate improvisations. Either way, they work. Tonight, you feel it. The glow, the movement, the closeness of people wrapped not in blankets, but in shared resistance. You glance around. There's the miller's daughter, laughing with her teeth bared. There's the baker passing out crusts warm from a secret oven. Even Father Adalbert is here, though. He's pretending he's just blessing the fire, not tapping his foot to the beat. The heat is glorious. You strip off your gloves, then your hood. For once your fingers don't ache. You can feel your ears. Someone tosses another log onto the fire, and sparks rise into the air like fireflies fleeing to heaven. The music swells, then slows. The dance becomes a sway. People draw closer to the fire. Conversations begin soft and sleepy voices too tired to argue. Children curl up by their parents. Someone sings a lullaby off-key. No one minds. And you finally warm to your coarse, sink-to-the-ground cloak wrapped around your legs, the heat of the fire curling into every inch of you like a balm. For one night it's enough. The cold waits, of course. It always does. But not tonight. Tonight you are fed with music and fire and the company of others who've made it this far. Tomorrow the snow will fall again. The wind will rise, but tonight it holds its breath. The bonfire has burned low. What was once a raging column of flame, reaching into the heavens, is now a glowing hill of embers pulsing faintly, like the slowing heart of a great beast. Around it, the villagers lie in a loose circle, some slumped on cloaks, others curled against each other, feet to fire, hands tucked into armpits for warmth. The night has claimed most of them already. Their murmurs have gone quiet. The music is gone. The laughter has melted into soft breath and the shuffle of sleeping limbs. You're still there, sitting cross-legged on a patch of packed snow that's now wet and slushy from the long evening's warmth. You're watching the fire die. Watching the last embers sink into the ash like stars being slowly buried by time. A few sparks pop and float upward, drawn toward the dark sky, where the stars still shine sharp clear, and so numerous it almost hurts to look at them. You tip your head back. The stars feel closer tonight, almost reachable. Like if you just stretched high enough, you could pluck one down and keep it in your pocket for the journey back to your freezing bed. You don't want to move. Not yet. This is the warmest you've been in weeks. The only time the heat has truly touched your skin, not just brushed past you like a stranger in a crowd. Your cheeks are still flushed, and your hands for once don't feel like old bark. Your breath puffs gently in front of you, soft and white and peaceful. The last time you felt this warm was maybe never. Or at least not this winter. Maybe not the one before either. This night has been a brief rebellion, a flicker of joy in a season that normally steals it away. A single moment of light and heat and movement and noise in a world that spends most of its time being cold and quiet. You look around. Father Adalbert is asleep with his back against a log mouth, open slightly, his crooked cross still clutched in one mittened hand. The miller's wife is curled beside her sister, both of them using each other's hair as makeshift pillows. Even the baker, who normally grumbles at anything louder than a whisper, is snoring gently, one leg still twitching to the echo of a remembered dance. Your family is already gone. They left not long after the music faded, trudging home under the weight of full bellies and rare smiles. They tried to get you to come, but you stayed. You wanted this last bit, this quiet, this sliver of peace between the fire's roar and the cold's return. But you know it can't last. The fire is nearly gone, and the cold, your old familiar adversary, is already beginning to creep back in. You can feel it in your toes first, then in the fingers. Then it slides up your sleeves like a thief, slipping under your cloak and coiling around your spine. So you rise, slowly, knees stiff back, cracking hands, brushing ash from your cloak. You take one last look at the embers, still glowing, still alive, in their own tired way, and turn toward home. The walk back is quieter now. The snow crunches beneath your feet with every step, a soft rhythm in the still night. The village is hushed. Windows are dark smoke trails thinly from a few chimneys. and every roof carries a dusting of white like powdered sugar on old loaves. Your breath fogs the air ahead of you, and each exhale is a gentle offering to the night. When you reach the cottage, the door creaks open as always, just a touch too loud, and the warmth, faint and feeble as it is, greets you like a sigh. The fire is low. A stub of wood glows in the hearth, and someone, probably your mother, has banked the coals beneath a mound of ash to keep them alive till morning. The pig is asleep in her usual place, curled into the best corner of the hearth. She snorts softly as you enter, one ear flicking in vague acknowledgement before she returns to whatever pigs dream about. The rest of your family is bundled in layers of cloth straw and exhaustion. Bodies lined up like logs on a forest floor. You step carefully between them, avoiding elbows and ankles, and finally reach your own spot. It's still warm from earlier. Not fire warm, but family warm. You slide under your cloak, tucking your feet in tight, and shift until your hip finds the least lumpy bit of straw. Your limbs settle slowly, protesting every movement, every adjustment, until you're finally still. And then the silence sets in. Not an empty silence, but a full one. A silence heavy with presence. The breathing of those around you. The occasional wheeze. The faint rustle of straw. The gentle exhale of someone sinking deeper into sleep. Even the fire makes a small noise, a low, sleepy crackle like it too is nodding off. You close your eyes. But sleep doesn't come instantly. It rarely does. Your mind drifts circling the firelight behind your eyelids. You think of the dancing, of the music, of the way your little brother laughed when the drummer tripped and fell into the snow. You think of how your sister twirled with the miller's daughter, both of them glowing like the fire was inside them. You think of how for just a few hours no one was coughing. No one was worrying about food. No one was cold. That one warm night. That one moment. You wonder if that's all it takes, just one night like that, to carry you through a season like this. A fringe belief from one of the older villagers floats to mind. Old Furwin always said that warmth from a festival could soak into your bones and last for a month. Longer if you danced proper, he'd add, tapping his knee with a grin. You didn't dance proper. You stumbled. You nearly tripped over the baker's dog. But you danced. You moved. You were there. And maybe that's enough. You shift again, finally letting your body go heavy. Your breathing slows. The pig's warmth inches across your back. The fire whispers. The wind brushes at the walls like a curious spirit testing for cracks. But it doesn't find a way in. Not tonight. Tonight you are wrapped in the memory of heat, the echo of laughter, and the presence of those who are still here, still breathing, still shivering, still enduring beside you. And the cold can wait until morning. And now, as the fire dwindles to a soft, amber glow, your body begins to release its final tension. The night wraps around you like a thick woolen cloak, heavy, steady, and deeply still. You're not cold anymore, not in the urgent biting way. What lingers now is just the quiet hum of winter muted and far away. Your limbs sink deeper into the straw. The weight of the cloak settles on your chest like a lullaby. Your breath moves slowly now, deep and even rising and falling with the rhythm of a world that has finally decided to pause. Around you, the gentle sounds of others sleeping return, a slow sigh, a rustle of cloth, the creak of an old beam shifting in the ceiling like a yawn from the house itself. The wind outside has softened. It no longer scratches at the door, but whispers instead, gentle and distant, as if it knows the hour has come to let go. There's no need to brace yourself anymore. No more icy water. No more aching knees. No more frozen boots or empty plates. Not tonight. You've done it. You survived the coldest hours. You've endured the hunger, the smoke, the silence. And now, beneath this thatched roof, with a fire still faintly alive, and your family breathing quietly around you, you're allowed to rest. Let the world shrink. Let your thoughts slow. Let every part of you grow heavier, warmer, quieter. You're safe now. You're held. You're home. Let sleep take you gently. Let it carry you away where the stars are soft, the straw is smooth, and the fire never goes out. Good night, traveler of long winters. Sleep well,